Welcome to the magical journey beyond mediocrity, where the mystical and the practical become aligned. You're listening to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success, with your host, Seeker's Guide and Coach, Kristen Lloyd. Kristen guides you through mindset shifts to increase your consciousness and live your best life. So let's leave mediocrity behind and step into your magical, magnificent life with Kristen.
Welcome back, everyone, to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success. I am your host and Seeker's Guide, Kristen Lloyd. Thank you for being here and tuning in for today's show. We are now accepting call-ins. If you want to jump on the call and get into the conversation, the number is 248-629-0921. As usual, we have another very special guest today. Our guest is Dani Turcotte. Dani is a spiritual teacher, psychic medium, and mindset and manifesting coach, a woman after my own heart. Through her expertise, intuition, and clear connection to spirit, she empowers people around the world, helping them shift their mindset, connect to their own intuition, and transform their health, bank accounts, and relationships. Welcome, Dani.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so excited that you are here, and I am a total fan of yours, and I think you are amazing. And so I'm so excited that you said yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love your work as well, so it was an honor, truly, to be invited.
Oh, thank you. So, as you were forewarned, I always ask my guests about your journey, about how you got to this place. And each one of us is really gifted, and we have these spiritual gifts, and you have psychic gifts, and as a spiritual teacher, you've been on this path for a while. And I love to hear about people's journey to more, because it's never a straight shot, right? Success is never a straight shot. The journey to more is never a straight shot. So please tell us, the listeners, about your journey to more.
Oh, it's such a loaded question, but
I know.
As you said, it's definitely has not been, completely straight and easy peasy. It's been bumpy and ugly and messy. And I guess I would start with, I come from a background of, a religious family. Okay. I was literally raised in the church. My grandfather's a pastor. So we weren't walking around talking about, crystals and chakras and connecting with spirit.
Me neither. I get it.
And we weren't, talking about, of course we were not talking about mediumship, right? Because I grew up thinking, I knew that I had these gifts, okay? I knew from a young age, but I grew up thinking that there was something wrong with me. I literally thought that I was cursed and that I was going to go to hell. And I remember, a couple of times, talking to my mom and telling her I wanted to go home, but I was pointing to heaven. And she didn't understand that, and it scared her. So I was always met with fear when I tried to communicate, who I was and what I was experiencing. So I just shut it off. I shut off my stuff.
Right.
And as a result of that, along came the bumps and the ugliness and the messiness, many heartbreaking and painful life lessons, along the way. After because this is my second marriage, as you know, I'm a newlywed. So
congrats.
Thank you. Before him, I was, married to somebody, and I obviously we're divorced now. And after that, because I shut off my intuition, I met a real life con artist who totally, manipulated me, controlled me, and put me into bankruptcy. He racked up a bunch of debt. And the whole time during that brief relationship, I kept getting the red flags, right, that we all talk about. The intuitive hits, oh my God, this is not right. This does not feel good. but I was so scared to be alone and, just completely lost that I ignored it. And it changed my life, obviously. And at the time, it was the worst thing I had been through. Well, shortly after that, I ended up in the hospital with a very serious case of pancreatitis. And again, and there again, I was ignoring my body's signals, not paying attention to what was going on. Now, I've had this before, I've had that before many times. This particular time, though, almost literally killed me. And I was in the hospital. I remember getting there. I remember all that. And I sort of remember like checking in. But after that, it's a blank. And I literally wake up 5.5 weeks later, to be told that I was in the hospital that long. And I literally almost died. And I remember waking up from the coma, and I couldn't communicate because I had an emergency tracheotomy. So there was all this stuff that happened, right, as a result of not listening to my intuition and not paying attention to what my body was telling me. And I remember in the coma, I still remember the dreams I had because they were deeply spiritual in nature. And the whole message, the underlying message the entire time during these dreams was you can choose to live and change your life, and it's going to be painful and it's going to suck and it's going to require courage. I'm getting a little emotional. Or you can choose death. And I chose life, and I chose the hard way. Mm-hmm. And I remember waking up and feeling like this weight lifted off of me. And that's when my path to now really began. Was I started using the law of attraction really before I even knew what it was. I remember visualizing my body healing, and I remember, visualizing all day walking out of that hospital, because I had to basically relearn to walk.
Wow.
Because my muscles atrophied. Yeah. I knew intellectually I knew how to walk, but my body did not.
Right.
And so I was visualizing the entire time, what my life was going to look like when I walked out of there. Mm-hmm. And, and then I started the process of developing my gifts, really embracing and remembering and acknowledging. And pretty much taking it from there. And here I am.
Well, we're happy to have you in the light, right? Sharing your gifts, because this is you aligned with purpose. And that's when all of the external things come, right? Is when you're living in your purpose. So a lot of people seek out the external things not in alignment, and then they just keep hitting a brick wall, right? Like, where's my stuff? Whereas when you are aligned, at least that's been my experience. Is that true for you as well?
Oh, for sure. That was pretty much what led me to that abusive relationship. I was externally seeking, right? I was so lonely and didn't know how to create happiness for myself or find it inside. Mm-hmm. So it was constantly, I needed that external validation and source of happiness, and it was just this constant, I have to find it. I have to find it. Mm-hmm. So I'm totally on the same page with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, when you were talking, I wanted to ask, when did you realize that you had certain intuitive gifts? Because it sounds like you were really, really young, mm-hmm. and yet it didn't fall in line with the church's teachings, and even you pointing up to the sky. Was there anybody in your family that said, oh no, you've got to, shut that down, and maybe not verbally in that regard, but how did you know that you had these gifts? Were you seeing things, hearing things, or...
Yeah.
Okay.
So I get asked that quite often. I love talking about that because it's so important. I'm not the only one obviously with this experience. So,
right.
I remember, I think I was probably 3 or 4 when I would have, and this happened quite often, I would have these experiences where I would wake up, from sleeping in the middle of the night, and I could just feel a presence. Mm-hmm. It was very heavy sometimes. There was a lot of, unhappiness in my family. I come from domestic violence, so, I'm sure that energy was attracting some stuff. But right. I would wake up and feel somebody or something on me holding me down, and I couldn't scream and I couldn't speak.
Right.
And there's a term for that, and of course I can't think of it right now. But there is a name for that.
Yeah.
And I would have this experience quite often, and I would try to tell people about this, and nobody in my family understood what I was talking about. They thought, as adults tend to do with children, they thought, oh, you're just your imagination, or, oh, you're just making stuff up. Mm-hmm. And then the thing with the heaven, pointing to heaven. I believe that part of my mission is to, lead people back to love. That's a big part of my mission. And, there's the whole earth angel thing. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yep.
I thoroughly, I've had past life things, come to light recently, and I thoroughly believe that that's me. And it makes total sense with all my experiences and the heaven thing, and just there's so many little things that tell me that, that's absolute truth for me. So yeah, I've always known about the gifts, but from years of repression, I kind of forgot about it. As weird as that might sound, like, how do you forget about that? But I guess what I was trying to do psychologically was ignore it, because in my mind it made me bad and wrong. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Like that I remember, and I was raised Catholic, but the sinful nature, right? So
absolutely,
if you're dabbling in mediumship, then you're on the other side. So
absolutely, that's exactly what it was.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
I did not want to go to hell.
Right.
And
who does?
burn alive. Right.
Like, please select me.
You're right. It was not on the plan, it was not on my to-do list. So I'm like, I think I was like trying as hard as I could, right, to, I guess I thought if I ignored it long enough, it would go away. Mm-hmm. And then now, it's funny because now that I'm like out with my gifts and I'm very vocal about it, my family has been surprisingly supportive. Mm-hmm. And now I know that I was not the only one too. Like I come from a family of very intuitive people, but they're still kind of locked into that fear as well. So it's an interesting dynamic now, but
right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the experience that you shared about being asleep and waking up and not being able to move, it's really fascinating because I think that was most of my late teens and 20s. Mm-hmm. And I never knew what it was called. Like, I tried to look it up, and of course there's some medical definition. Yeah. But I didn't know what it was, and I still don't. But the one thing that I know is that when I started, and now that I'm putting the connections together that you said it, when I really started honoring my own personal development journey, I started with the Wayne Dyer and the Marianne Williamson books. And, right? Mm-hmm. That's where I began. And that they decreased quite almost immediately.
Yep.
And absolutely. When I started seeking within, and it's interesting because it was scary when it happened, but I think my first experience with scary stuff was like with a Ouija board at my sister's
Oh
house.
God, yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
that scared the crap out of
Yeah.
me. But I have never been like, I don't want to see people. Like, I don't want to see dead people, you know,
Mhm,
and it's
right.
not always, I don't want to see spirits. I've always been that kind of person. And I remember
Yeah.
my older sister telling me the fact that you don't want to see it probably means you're going to. And I'm
Right.
like, great, great.
Well,
And
yeah, because your energy was going there, you know?
right, right.
Yeah.
And so, but I had those experiences. I haven't seen anything, but there have been times where I've heard someone call my name and nobody's there. Like
Yeah.
nobody's in the house with me,
Yeah.
or
They like to
things
do
get
that.
moved. Huh?
They like to do that.
Right, right. And so I think that that's been part of my journey as well, similarly to yours, that, and I never realized that is a wake-up call until you just started talking about it.
Awesome. Yeah, it's funny when, you know, you've had this experience your whole life and nothing really clicks about it. And then you're talking to somebody and it's like, oh my gosh, I love that.
Right.
But yeah, that was like the biggest thing that I remember early on was, you know, the medical term, by the way, is sleep paralysis, but there's a spiritual name for it. And I, of course, cannot recall the name of it right now,
right.
but that was one thing. And I remember, you know, the whole imaginary friends thing, but I really saw them. That was the thing. And I actually didn't remember that part until, gosh, 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was crazy. Yeah, I was in meditation and this whole thing came up. I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, the mediumship thing has always been there as well. I've always had this like ability to kind of, well, I'm an empath, so I can feel emotions from not just people, but animals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's developed quite rapidly too, in recent months, actually. So it's like once you plug into, you know, your gifts, then all the other stuff comes up to the surface too. And it's really cool. It's like, oh my God, like it's just, it always blows my mind, even though, you know, this is my life, right? It's like, this is a day, I don't ever become jaded to it and I don't ever take it for granted. I love what I do. I love what I'm able to do, and not just for, you know, it's not an ego thing. It's because I truly love being able to be a messenger for people, mm-hmm. and also help them uncover their gifts. And that happens a lot. I tend to attract other very intuitive people.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just a cool life and I'm not complaining.
Yay. So when did you start incorporating these gifts into your business? And, you know, even before that question, I'm tempted to ask which came first, the business. I mean, obviously the gifts came first, but did you have an idea that of the business first, or did you say, okay, I'm going to incorporate my spiritual gifts into the business? Like, which did you really hone first, and how did that work out?
Okay. So, I love that question, by the way, because I don't get asked that very often. I would say definitely, like you said, the gifts were already there. So it was like this process, right? I had to heal physically and emotionally from that hospital experience that I had. There was a lot of healing that needed to be done. So during that time I was healing at home, I was on this spiritual quest and diving really deep and healing and shedding beliefs that weren't mine. You know, there was this process, right? It wasn't just like, oh, I went home and decided I was going to be a psychic and, you know, here I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a whole very intense process. Mm-hmm. That needed to happen. And, you know, when I was released, you know, from the hospital and went back to work for a while, I used to work in the corporate world, and then I lost my job right before Christmas. So it was like I was already, you know, aware of my gifts at that point, right? It was like they were definitely bubbling to the surface and coming out, and I was using them for my own sake. I didn't have clients yet. And at that time I was actually working with Masson. So, and then I lose my job, and I remember telling him, and he said, congratulations. And it was like, oh yeah, I was like, what do you mean? You know, I'm freaking out here. But
well, that's what he talks about, the perfect storm.
Exactly.
And for listeners who may not know what we're talking about, so Dani's first life coach was Maston Kipp, who has a book, The Daily Love, and he also has a website, The Daily Love, and he's been featured on Oprah and in a lot of other places, Hay House and so forth. But so, Dani, you had the opportunity of working with him, and when you lost your job, he was like, awesome!
Yeah, he was like, you know, he totally said, congratulations, and he totally meant it. And I'm like, at first I was like, what do you mean? And then I kind of laughed because he's right, you know, and I was like, okay, the universe, because I had been thinking too, right before I lost my job, I've been thinking that it was sucking my soul, right? I was like, just, oh my God, I hated it. I wanted out, and I didn't know how to make that happen. And the universe was like, well, here you go. We're going to make it happen for you.
Exactly.
So I kind of got to push into my business. And at first I had no idea what I was going to do. I absolutely was not out, okay, at the time with my gifts. So the furthest thing from my mind when I first started, I think I'm approaching the 2nd year mark now, in my business. Mm-hmm. I was not thinking, oh, I think I'm going to be, you know, a psychic life coach and, you know, help people in that way. And it was not crossing my mind. I just knew that I wanted to work with people and help people in some way. So it was an evolution again, right? There's a lot of stuff that had to happen, of course, to get to this point where I'm like, you know what? I'm freaking psychic.
Yeah.
There was a lot of tiptoeing around it at first. I started kind of like slowly calling myself intuitive. A lot of people are very comfortable with that word, and that's fine. And for me, I had to get to that point where I was comfortable with actually just saying, you know what, I'm psychic. It's scarier and it's bigger and bolder. The word psychic.
I resonate. Like because I haven't seen things, and because when people ask me things on demand, I can't say like, yes, you're going to have a baby in 6 months. Like those things don't come to me, but I am. So that resonates because I would never be comfortable at this point in my life calling myself psychic, because for me, my definition of intuitive is things come to me. I know them. I can share them. As we're talking, there are things that come and I feel energy. I'm an empath. Yeah. I sense things, and it's more sensory, and I hear things, and just knowing things. I just know them. But if someone were to say, when am I going to get married? Or should I leave this person? Or it doesn't, I
totally get it.
Yeah. And so that I would not be comfortable calling myself psychic because my definition of psychic is answers on demand.
Absolutely. And you know what? A lot of people feel that way, and that's totally fine. You know, a lot of people, even people that I've worked with, that are super psychic, right?
Right.
When I've like shared with them, hey, did you know that you have these gifts? What are you talking about? I'm like, really? You didn't know?
Right.
You know, they're not comfortable with that word because it is very bold. And like you, many people have that certain definition in their mind of what a psychic is. And I always say, like, everybody is intuitive, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's intuitive.
It's a muscle.
Psychic. Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And, you know, psychic is a whole different thing. But I do believe that people have the ability to develop those gifts.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just a very interesting life, and everybody's comfortable with, you know, a different way to express, you know, what their gifts are. And that's totally fine. For me, though, it was like I had to get to that point. I had to work my way up, you know, to owning that I'm psychic.
Right.
And I remember when I first started to like dabble with my business, you know, kind of overlapping, I remember I started out with channeling.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, when I first channeled, like for other people, I was like blown away because my accuracy is pretty high. I mean,
That's so
still the same.
awesome.
Yeah. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm good at this.
Right.
And then so many people, you know, were like, oh my God, thank you so much. And it was like such a gift, and it still is, you know,
Right.
to be able to bring that message to people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was like, I started out that way, and then I started, you know, doing cards. And again, there was an evolution there because when I hear, and my mom is the same way, tarot, right? Oh my God, you talk about striking fear into the heart of somebody who comes from a religious background.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
It's the same thing with the Ouija board.
Yeah.
It's like, whoo. Yeah. That took me a while to get comfortable with that. And, you know, now it's just like, it's second nature. I actually have a deck of cards sitting right next to me right now.
So do I, although mine are angel cards. And
yeah, mine are too.
That was my level of comfort. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so interesting because I have a tarot deck and I've read for my family before, but I haven't memorized all the cards. So
Yeah.
I will use the book or Biddy Tarot. I love her stuff.
Yeah.
And I will then put down that and then add depth to it based on what comes to me. But I haven't memorized the cards. And so to me, again, because we all judge ourselves, right? I feel like that's cheating. But with the, right? But I have tons of decks. And so I don't.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I'll do readings for people. But that's another thing that I've heard, especially being in the South. Like, you do angel cards? Like,
yeah. I know. That's like a whisper, right?
Right.
What does that mean?
Yes. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And I've actually gone to a lot of events lately with other coaches and counselors. And when I say I'm a Reiki master and I do cards, they're like, really? And so I know the interest is there, and they've said like, that's so cool. But yet I've also been told that that's not going to fly down here. So I'm thinking that that's maybe similar to what your coming out experience was like, because what we're told and how we're programmed is, you know, you belong in the fair, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's pretty mind blowing, you know, because there's two levels to that, right? On one hand, people are still scared of it, right? But on the other hand, people are interested in it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And there's this outcry for this connection to spirit. And people are actually coming around, and it's becoming more acceptable now. It's not so taboo anymore. You know, and I love that. I love that because, you know, we could sit here and talk about past lives all day, and I could tell you about my past life with, you know, being burned at the stake. But that's another show.
That is, for sure. But that's fascinating. So, but that's part of your spiritual journey. And when you discovered that, what did that mean for you in this life? What did that represent for you in this life? Because remembering that is part of that past life, but every past life experience is part of this evolution or culmination of what you're supposed to do here. So I'm curious to know what that meant for you here and now. What was that representative of?
For me, when I first learned about that, I wasn't surprised, you know, given in this lifetime, you know, my evolution, you know, to now, right?
Right.
I wasn't surprised, but at the same time, it was like devastating to me. And so there was a little bit of processing that needed to take place. And then I realized that, you know, this is so in line with what I do. I no matter what I'm doing with a client, you know, yes, I'm a mindset coach and yes, I'm a spiritual coach, right? But ultimately, I'm always helping people connect to their intuition and to develop their gifts. So for me, this was like just kind of a natural segue into that because, you know, I have this past life that needs healing, right? And I need to shed this fear that surrounds, you know, coming out with your gifts, right? Mm-hmm. And because of that, I'm able to help people and be more understanding of where they are in their own journey. You know what I mean? And this, like we were talking about earlier, the difference between intuitive and psychic. Right. And really, you know, yes, there's a difference, but it's not about like judging people for using a certain word, right? It's just whatever is comfortable for you. And for me, it took me, you know, time to get to this point. So I'm totally understanding, you know, of people who are only comfortable saying intuitive. You know, that's fine. That's not for me to decide. That's your journey. So I feel like, you know, really, yes, it's my past life, but I feel like it totally is in line with what I do with my clients. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. No, it does. And I think that that's also moving past the fear, because that is the greatest fear. I think that that's the fear that everybody has, that when I come out with this, I'm going to die.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's this, it sends so much, it sends so much fear into your heart, you know, to think, oh my God, I can't do that because this will happen, you know, and it really is that fear of death, because your soul has memories. That's why we have these things, you know, deja vu, right? Mm-hmm. Our soul remembers, right? So when we have fear come up, that's like totally, it doesn't make sense for this lifetime, right? Like people, somebody in my family, I will not say who because that would probably embarrass this person, but somebody in my family is terrified of horses. Mm-hmm. And there's no reason for that in this lifetime, right? Right. So totally means there's a past life issue. Right. You know, but it's the same thing because your soul remembers. So if people have this intense fear of being vocal and being out with their gifts, mm-hmm. there's going to be some sort of past life association there.
Right. Right. Yeah. I have a client that's afraid to walk on the street by herself, like on the sidewalk. And she even said, like, jokingly, maybe I was abducted in a past life or something. I don't know.
I hear attack. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like when you said that, I hear attack. So that definitely tells me that there's something there too. You know, it's because there's no reason to be afraid of things that haven't happened to you in this life, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So when you really came out with your gifts, did it just kind of unfold naturally, or how did you work through the fear?
God, that was such an intense process. The first step for me, of course, was acknowledging. That's the first step, right? It was like, okay, I have this gift. And I just remembered just now on this call with you where that epiphany came from. Thank you, Spirit. I love that. So the first time that I was like, my awareness was brought back to having these gifts, I was actually on a call with a client. Yep. Thank you, Spirit. Right. Yeah. So once I it was like an intuitive hit, right? And I said it to her and she was like, oh my God, how did you know that? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to think about it, get back to you. And then it happened again. And then it happened again. And so on and so forth. So then I was like, okay, this is not a coincidence. There's something here. And I need to explore that. So I started this meditation practice. You know, I started to have a dialogue with myself and with spirit, and really like discovering, you know, and I'm a student of life.
Right.
Perpetual student of life. So I was just delving into anything I could get my hands on about this. And things just started to rapidly evolve from there.
Mm-hmm.
So the intuitive hits started to become channeling.
Right.
I would be woken up at like 2 or 3, and this still happens. You know, it happens way more now. I'd be woken up at all hours, especially my guides like to wake me up at like 333. They think that's funny.
Yeah.
Especially because it's my favorite number. So that's like a little joke. But yeah, I would be woken up at like, you know, 333 or 111 with these like incredible messages that I just had to get out.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. And I even channeled an entire book. It was a children's book.
Oh, awesome.
It's not published yet, but yeah, I it's ready to go. It's just, you know, it'll happen. So yeah, it was like just from there, you know, it was simply the first step of acknowledging that it wasn't a coincidence. I wasn't crazy. This wasn't an accident. I didn't get lucky, right? Those are all the things that come to mind when somebody's like, I wonder if I have those gifts, or I wonder if that was just a coincidence, or if I just got lucky. And I'm like, no. No. Almost always the answer is no. You know, your intuition is not. And we've cultivated the society of like downplaying intuition, you know, and calling it coincidence and calling it luck, and it's not. Intuition is like our direct connection to spirit. So, but yeah, it unfolded rapidly, simply from acknowledging, is the short answer.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. What is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur in the spiritual community?
Connection. A profound connection. Like, you know, we live in the digital age, right? And there's so much of a facade that goes with that, right?
I agree.
Yeah. I know you get me. There's this
I do.
Yeah. And, you know, I, of course, you know, always tune in, right? And love people that are wherever they are in their journey, no matter what.
Right.
But for me, I like to go deeper than, here, look at my pretty pictures on social media.
You're my soul sister. Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I'm all about going deeper. Yes.
Yeah. It's like, I've seen enough, you know, I've seen enough of that. I want more. Like, show me who you are. Right. And that's why, like, I'm sure you've seen my posts on Facebook. You know, I'm an emotional, soulful person. So I want to trigger that in other people. I want to trigger your emotions because I need to connect with you on that level. And that, for me, you know, when we talk about spirituality, that's what it is. Spirituality is connecting, right? It's connecting to everything. It's not calling it God. It's not calling it spirit. You know, that's just a word, really. You know, spirituality is all consuming. It's all around us. It's not, it doesn't look like one thing or the other. So that's really what it is. I mean, I love that we have technology to be able to do that, you know, to connect with people all over the world.
Right.
And that's really what it is for me. That's my favorite part.
I love it. Connection. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very powerful. I think that it's also about reaching people who you might not have otherwise reached.
Yes, exactly. Absolutely. I have clients all over the world, and without like technology or, you know, the spiritual component and connecting somehow in that fashion, I wouldn't be able to reach people in Australia. I have a lot of Aussie clients. And I love them, you know, and Canada, and who else am I forgetting? Switzerland, you know, freaking London. I mean, they're all over the place. Right. So I love that.
And would you say that you called them in, or that you just raised your energy and they were just attracted to you and found you?
Both. Absolutely both. I've heard a lot of, other people talk about, horror clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I had this horrible client, blah, blah, blah. And I've never had that experience. So for me, because I'm consciously aware, right, of where my energy goes, because we're always manifesting. Everybody is always manifesting, but there's a difference between manifesting what you want and what you don't, as you know.
Yes.
So I would say that it's both. Part of that is me, because I'm always, asking spirit to connect me with people who are aligned with my vibration. That's really important for me. And then the other part of that too is I constantly get messages or emails, oh my God, I have to work with you. I was drawn to you. I don't know why. Well, I'm like, that was probably me.
Right.
My bad. So I would say it's both. I feel like the people who are drawn to me are also, manifesting me in a way, because they're looking for something, right? They're seeking. So it's co-creating.
It is. Do you have an intention setting process?
Yes, I do. I would like to say that I'm like super diligent with it and I do it every day. No, I don't. I'm human. I'm human. I have pets to deal with and just moved into a new house, so it's like no. But I do have a practice, and it's not like this big, long, drawn-out thing for me.
Right.
It's simply directing my energy to where I want it to go. That's really it. Part of that is, meditating for a little bit, just so I can like clear my energy, right, and calm my nerves and all that. And I tend to tell my clients this too, always, if you've ever worked with me, if you're listening, you know that I'm all about this part. Writing it down is so powerful. And a lot of people don't talk about why, and I think a lot of people don't know why. But writing down your intentions is powerful because it's like an ancient form of communication. So it's connecting to spirit and the universe and all that, okay, on a very, almost, I want to say primal level.
Right.
Because we didn't have social media thousands of years ago, obviously.
Right.
We had we had sticks and dirt.
Yep.
And all that, and any sort of writing tool that you think of when you think of like an ancient, or antique sort of writing instrument, right? There's power in that. Yeah. And like I always say, the universe is vibrational, not conversational. So whatever you're writing down, it's really important to infuse that with the right vibration. If you're writing down, like, let's say you're writing down, oh, I want to manifest, a new husband or a new house, right? But you're like, this is some BS, woo-woo bullcrap, right? Blah, blah, blah. This is not going to work for me, but I'm going to manifest a husband. If you're like all sarcastic about it, guess what? You're infusing that energy into that. So it's really important to align your vibration with what you're trying to call in.
Yeah, I love that. And I completely agree. I think that when you're writing, I love to utilize the state of gratitude. Like, oh my God, yeah. How will I feel when? And bring that into that present moment.
Absolutely.
When writing.
That's such a huge, yes, absolutely. That's something I also talk about with my clients is if you practice gratitude right now before what you want actually physically manifests, that's just calling it closer to you, right? And faster. You're like affirmations too. If you're doing affirmations and they're not working for you, I always ask, well, what are you saying? And a lot of times I'll hear, well, one of my affirmations is I will be successful. I'm like, that's your problem right there.
Exactly.
will be is putting more distance between you and what you want. So call it in with positive present tense language and gratitude, like you said. Absolutely.
Right. So I am.
I am is so powerful. So powerful. I have a whole thing about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. So how do you plan to expand your impact on the world? World domination with Dani.
It's funny because this is like, I had a huge download. God, what was it now? A week or two ago?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm supposed to talk about it, like Spirit's really kind of nudging me, and I didn't
Maybe
expect
this
it.
is the place, Dani.
So, a little announcement, I guess. Why not? I'm actually being called to go into ministry. Ordained. So, that's something that never, ever crossed my mind.
And I'm sitting here, and I get chills, and I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know yet. That's like, I've had a vision, right? I had a vision about a year ago. I'm getting emotional, of course, again. But yeah, I had a vision about a year ago, and it was like this really intense, whole, very detailed vision, and it was during meditation, and I heard very clearly Spirit say the next Tony Robbins, and I'm like, what are you talking about? I even skipped classes in college that required any sort of public speaking. I'm like, no, you don't understand. That was meant for somebody else, not me. So, but in this vision, right, I very clearly saw myself on stage addressing an audience very comfortably, and I wasn't sure in what capacity. I didn't know what that was. And then when I got this download the other day, I was like, I was laughing because I was like, there's no way. This is definitely meant for somebody else, Spirit. That's too big. It's too big. And hello, did you forget who you're talking to? I'm like so anti-organized religion, and Spirit was like, that's not what we're talking about.
Right.
Right? This is not religion. This is a church that welcomes all. This is a spiritual ministry, right? That is not exclusive. And I'm getting major chills right now.
I know. Well, I mean, so many of the talks, like Wayne Dyer, may he rest in peace. Like he was not, and I don't know what and I have no idea what his religious affiliation was, but so much of the stuff was about connecting with Spirit and, life force energy. Yeah. And he would use the word God, but in very generic terms. And, so many of his teachings, how he talked, I want to say it was Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, how the Tao Te Ching was very similar to the teachings of Jesus. And all of these spiritual teachers who have come before us, my personal belief is that religion puts you into a box, and spirituality is this all-encompassing,
connective.
Exactly. And the other thing, when you were talking earlier, I met with Jennifer Urezio, who I had on the show a couple weeks ago, and she's the soul language teacher, and she's someone who finds your soul language. And one of the things that we identified when I was doing that was that one of my soul languages, or one of my purposes, is to bring people back to the consciousness of love. And so I got chills when you said, I'm to guide people to love. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I love it. I love it.
And when we think, and that's why I love Rumi so much. And that's why I also call myself the Seeker's Guide, is because I think that I believe, not just think, I believe that we're being called to a relationship with the divine. What you call it, I really don't care.
Right, exactly.
But that consciousness of love, and you having a relationship with the divine, and really loving yourself, because I think that another part of that is that people do these things to harm themselves, and then they go to this place, and whether you want to call it church or whatever, it doesn't matter, you go to this place and you put a mask on.
Yes, absolutely.
And you show other people that you're quote unquote living these social norms. You put on a mask and you go to this place and you say, look, I'm a good person. And then you go home and you hate yourself.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that connection is missing.
Right. And so what I feel, and, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to include you in my, my little ministry here, if you want to call it that. So, is that we're being called, I think we all are in some way, to really bring people back to the consciousness of love, to be authentic, to be aligned, and to take off the masks.
Yes, absolutely.
Amen.
I couldn't have said it better. It's really, that's what it is, because I remember, going to church, not my grandfather's church so much, but like other churches.
Right.
And just knowing, even at a very, like, that most of the people were full of crap.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not to be like judgmental, right? I know it sounds it, but it's meant to be like calling you out to like show you, right? To show you what's going on for real. Like stop hiding, right? Stop hiding behind that facade. Be who you are, accept it, and stop pretending. It's not about pretending.
And none of us are perfect. And I think
the
old model is this social acceptance. You've got to be perfect, right?
Exactly.
So we make mistakes, and there needs to be this compassion in addition to the connection.
Right.
So much more, because when people are compassionate with one another instead of judgmental, there's a shift.
Exactly. And that's what it is. It's, and that was the other thing too. Like, I remember hating going to church because everybody was all up in your business, and telling you how to live your life. And it's like, this doesn't feel right. And when I got that download, the biggest download I've ever had in my life, it was like, what? Right. I was like, Spirit, I think, my guides like missed a turn somewhere, and this was supposed to go to somebody else.
I think you got the wrong person.
Yeah, I think you got the wrong person. I was like, you're kidding me. And then there were tears, because I knew, like, on a deeper level, that this was right. It's just so in alignment.
Yeah.
And it's so scary, but it terrifies me. I'm not going to lie, but in a way that like excites me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I always describe, being able to tell the difference between your ego and your intuition, right? If it's something that you feel scared but excited about, and it feels in alignment with your mission, that's your intuition. This is so in alignment, it's ridiculous. So that's not something I was expecting to announce today, but hey, I guess it was meant to be. So thanks for that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I know that things will unfold for you as they should.
Thank you. Yeah, I trust the process, and I know it's not about my timing, it's about divine timing. So, that it'll happen when it's meant to, and whatever that looks like, I'm game.
So going back to your story of more, that's really what this is all about. Today's show, The Art of Trust, how that can save your life. And your story, your personal experience of the pancreatitis, and having that experience of, okay, now you have to make a choice. Mm-hmm. Choosing life and choosing to serve others and to help pull people back to love and, the consciousness of love and love with themselves and love with others. And that is raising our vibration as a whole, or it's done.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Absolutely.
Being called into your soul's purpose. So, and that happened at a soul level that didn't happen at a mind level, at a thought level.
Right. Absolutely. Yep. It's been a journey.
So what advice do you have for listeners who may be dabbling in this arena, who may be stepping into their intuition or their intuitive voice, or really expanding what intuition means for them, stepping into their gifts. I mean, there's so many different terms for it, but what advice would you have for someone who either is on a similar path that you've been on, where there's people who don't believe in that, or where they're just saying, okay, this is crazy or creepy or scary. What do I do?
Well, my first piece of advice would be that intuition is not scary, right? That's our direct connection to God, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it. There's no right or wrong, like you mentioned earlier. That's the first thing, okay? Letting go of that fear, that intuition. I'm not sure where that comes from, but it's definitely thousands of years old. Intuition has been demonized, and we need to come back to that. We've gotten to this place, right, where we're at right now. Yes, things are getting better in some ways, but overall, we're still in that place, right, vibrating. And that's because we're very much still plugged into the idea that intuition is not as important as living from the ego, right? Logic and all that. Logic has a place, don't get me wrong. But ego is driving society right now. And so by changing how you view the world and how you think and how you feel about yourself, the first step there is trusting your intuition. It's not a coincidence. There's nothing bad about your intuition, right? And I'm just kind of sensing the overall energy of the listeners. Like, yeah, there's definitely that belief of, but I don't believe that it's true, or I think that it's like I got lucky, right? Tuning in. And if you're not sure if you got lucky, I would say do a little experiment. That's kind of what I did. You know, I always say, like, coincidence sometimes can, is one thing, right? Like, if it happens once, right, that may be a coincidence, but I personally don't believe in coincidence.
Right.
So, try it out. If it happens 2, 3, 4 times, there's only so much explaining away you can do, right? So you've got to trust. You've got to hear your own voice, and that starts with, like, decluttering, filtering the white noise from society and from beliefs that were never yours and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful. And I think that white noise, and the other thing is that has always resonated with me is, or I would say more so recently, because I didn't know this when I was a child, but like prayer is you talking to source, and meditation is source talking to you. Yeah,
absolutely. I thoroughly agree with that. I always say that prayer is asking, meditating is listening.
Right.
So absolutely. Absolutely.
And I feel that there's a lot of us that are missing that other, and I say a lot of us because I'm talking about the human population that that we ask or we talk and we speak, but hearing, listening.
Right. Exactly.
Quieting the mind. Very powerful stuff.
For sure.
So that's awesome. Yeah. So where can people find you and get to know more about you? And I mean, they know a lot today.
Yeah. Well, of course, they can go to my website, DaniTurcotte.com. You can find me on Facebook. I'm on Twitter and Instagram now, finally. It took me a while to warm up to Instagram. But I'm kind of all over the place right now. So I would say my website is probably the best place right now. But I'm more so on Facebook and Instagram than anything else, if you're trying to find me on social media.
Okay. So if listeners were looking for you on Facebook, would they find you at Dani Turcotte on your business page, or do you have a group that you want to share?
On Facebook, I actually do have a group. It's called the Alchemy Academy for Entrepreneurs.
Awesome.
And it's all about mindset and manifesting. And my business page on Facebook is Dani Turcotte. And then, of course, my title. So,
woohoo!
Yeah. So hit me up. And I'm pretty good about responding to messages. If you do send me a message, be patient, though, because sometimes it takes a while. And like today, I had somebody send me a message like 2 days ago about one of my products, my Aligned Abundance Ritual.
Uh-huh.
And of course, you know, Facebook hit it in the ever so lovely other folder.
Oh, yes. This person's not your friend, so we're going to
Right. Right. So I'm like, and I'm usually pretty good about checking that because I know from experience that things get hidden there. So anywho, yes. Come find me. Come find me.
Yay. Well, thank you, Dani, for being here. And I appreciate you sharing your gifts with our listeners and sharing these tips. It's amazing.
Thank you for having me. It was a truly an honor to be here.
And I'm grateful as well. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It has been another great show. To continue the conversation, hop on over to the Mindset Alchemy group on Facebook, www.facebook.com/groups/Mindset Alchemy. And to grab your very own Seeker's Guide workbook, head on over to KristenLloyd.com and click on free gifts. I also want to share with you guys a 5-day challenge that I am starting next week. Shrink less, expand more. And you can access that challenge and sign up at bit.ly/expand more, all one word. And I look forward to seeing you there because we are definitely going to be helping individuals expand outside their comfort zone. So I hope you all have a great week. And until next time, you are meant for more. Keep seeking.
Thanks for tuning in to Meant for More, the Seeker's Guide to Success. But the fun doesn't end here. Head over to KristenLloyd.com for your Seeker's Guide workbook filled with exercises to help you go from mediocre to magically magnificent.